Hey guys, my name is Daniel. I'm an audio engineer here in Michigan. I wanted to show off a little bit of my at-home rig, some strange and weird things that I'm doing with it, just kind of go over some of the gear and how I'm doing it, some of the pitfalls, some of the things I've had to find workarounds for. So let's jump into it. First, I want to go over some of the original goals I had in mind when I was dreaming up this idea. The main one being a way to put plugins on the meter bridges of my S1's. Primarily, the S1 is going to use a tablet for the meter bridge. To start out, I had two Amazon Fire tablets, HD10s, on the S1's for that meter bridge, but I struggled with that quite a bit just because of the meters not perfectly lining up with the faders. I come from the live sound world where everything lines up perfectly, and it was just a real struggle for my workflow and my brain to work around that. So I ended up ditching the Amazon Fire tablets and just running them bare without any sort of meter bridge other than the meters that are on the OLED displays themselves. But also my brain at the time, I was thinking around and trying to come up with a solution that would really work well. Ultimately, what I ended up doing was coming across the Avid Control desktop software, which after a little bit of thinking and kind of troubleshooting in my brain, I figured there was probably a way where I could just add external screens to the S1's and then run that program right on the same computer that's running Pro Tools. I've been fortunate to build a lot of computers over the years, and so it was very easy for me to spec out and design something that could do that and handle that. The rig I'm running is a Ryzen 9 5950X with 64 gigs of 3600 megahertz RAM, as well as a RTX 2060 Super to be able to handle HDMI and dual DisplayPort output to my external screens. To start, I want to say that this is a hobby rig, I would call it. While I do this professionally at work, this is very much just my at-home rig that I'll do some minor mixing or some basic post-production work on as needed. This is not the crunch time, get it done rig. I'm not sure that at this time I would recommend this setup for something like that. There's a few too many flaky things that would possibly cause some delays or issues. So I'll absolutely hit those in this video as best as I can. I have workarounds for some of them at this point, but not all. I do have a degree in audio production, and while I was there getting that schooling, I was able to use the Slate Raven for an extended period of time. And I really did appreciate having the opportunity to touch and grab things on the specifically plug-in windows. And that was a lot of the inspiration for this project. However, nothing against Slate, but I found the rest of the overlay to be extremely fiddly and difficult to work with, and that's why I ended up just going with the S1's in the end. Again, coming from the live world, I really appreciate that tactility of being able to grab things and move things around. And so I just wasn't quite ready to give that up and go full touchscreen. So to outline the rig from the ground up, I'm using my custom-built PC, which is driving 3 external screens. Those screens are two 13.3-inch touchscreens that I ordered off Amazon, as well as a Samsung Q70 QLED TV for my main monitor. I have two Avid S1's along with an Avid dock. On the Avid dock is a standard 9.7-inch iPad for the control app. I'm of course running Yukon to handle the communication between everything, as well as Avid Control Desktop to emulate the meter bridges where most people would have tablets on the S1's. I think the greatest workflow improvement that this has created for me is just the ability to really never leave the edit window. The majority of what I would do in the mix window, I can either add to the front of the tracks in the edit window, or I can now utilize the S1's and the touchscreen combos. The center dock and control iPad allows me to quickly switch between tracks and plugins, and they will all auto-populate in the bottom right-hand screen. This leads me on to my first technical hurdle that I'm still overcoming, mainly that the touchscreens that I have are often seen as the same touchscreen by Windows. So there is a significant amount of configuration and trial and error that is required to get both of the touchscreens working effectively. The second touchscreen on the left almost always tries to see itself as the same touch input. And Windows struggles as well. I've used the tablet settings inside of Control Panel quite frequently to try to resolve this issue, and that's where I would normally go for a touchscreen-based issue like this. But it continues to plague me and be an issue. However, the bottom right touchscreen seems to work almost 100% of the time, so my tendency is to just always have the plugins populate in that bottom right-hand side. One of the other issues I've run into is Avid Control Desktop's tendency to struggle with higher scaling, as well as it seems scaling between different monitors. When scaling differs wildly from one monitor to another, I found that Avid Control Desktop struggles when you try to resize the window at all. Sometimes it'll just start spazzing out and becoming larger and smaller and then extremely large, and it would just generally be a pain to try to set that up on the monitors. However, I discovered that by setting the scaling on the two lower monitors to be 100 or 125%, and the upper monitor to be 150% or less, I've been more or less able to resolve that issue. Also, Avid Control Desktop sits a little bit behind the standard update cycle of the Control app. So some of the new features that just came out in this most recent 2022.12 update, such as the S1's soft keys, are missing out of the Avid Control Desktop. Certainly not a deal breaker for me, but something I look forward to in hopefully a future release. Another tiny struggle that I've had is the screens that I purchased have a large, shall we say, extrusion out the back. That means they don't entirely fit on the S1's well. I've solved that with some double-sided tape that seems to be holding it pretty well. But if I were to do it again, I think I would spend the extra on some touch screens that were a little bit thinner that I could actually set into the proper tablet mounts. Overall, I'm really happy with the new setup. One of my favorite things is just having the added screen real estate on my computer, not having screens that are dedicated to only one purpose. They can be email windows, they can be browser windows, whatever I need them to be on a particular day. Big shout out to the team at Avid. Really appreciate what you guys are doing. Love the software, love the hardware. Thanks again.